elections. I would like also to express my gratitude to state institutions, the judiciary, civil society, media, political parties, and independent candidates for, cooperation throughout the course of our observation and for sharing their views with our mission. Today I am presenting the final report at an opportune moment, at a time of significant international turbulence amid concerns for democracy and security. Bangladesh stands for democratic values. Just last week, the Partnership and Cooperation Agreement with the EU was initialed, reaffirming this unwavering commitment to democratic principles. Our final report comes in the spirit of this enhanced cooperation and as a part of the EU's own commitment to promoting and protecting our shared values, the respect for human rights, the rule of law, democracy, and transparent and credible elections. Our final report, which you will receive the printed copy after the end of this press conference, brings together the findings and analysis of all our observations conducted during our mission and offers a detailed analysis of all stages of these historic elections, from the voter and candidate registration to the tabulation and announcement of the election results. As part of this report, the mission offers 19 recommendations aimed at reinforcing the integrity of future electoral processes in line with Bangladesh international commitments. Among these, we have highlighted 6 priority recommendations, which I will present shortly. Just let me stress, we are offering these recommendations with a strong hope that they will contribute to the ongoing reform process and will ultimately strengthen Bangladesh democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, before I detail our recommendations, I would like to outline once again how an EU election observation mission works and assesses this electoral process. It all started with an invitation from the Election Commission and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to observe the upcoming elections. After an initial assessment, the European Union concluded that the necessary conditions were met and it was advisable to deploy a fully fledged electoral observation mission. And here I would like to emphasize it was the first such decision made by the EU since the 2008 election. A team of 11 analysts arrived in Dhaka here on the 28th December 2025. 2 weeks later, 56 long-term observers joined the mission and were deployed to all 64 administrative districts of Bangladesh. Observers in all districts and in the capital followed all stages of this historic election and jointly held more than 1,000 meetings with electoral stakeholders across the political and the civil society spectrum. A few days before the polls, 90 short-term observers, as well as 35 locally recruited short-term observers from diplomatic missions from the EU member states, as well as from Canada, Norway, and Switzerland, joined the mission to observe election day proceedings. A delegation of members of European Parliament was also fully integrated in the mission. On the election day, a total of 223 observers took to the field. By our operational standards, this is an unparalleled number, attesting to the European Union's commitment to supporting the democratic process of Bangladesh. It was also an acknowledgement that Bangladesh is an important partner of the European Union. 2 days after the polls, I presented the mission's preliminary statement, and after 2-month-long nationwide election observations, the mission concluded that this credible electoral process propelled the renewal of democracy. The full text of the preliminary statement you will find also on our website. No. Well, let me say a few words on our assessment of the elections as they are detailed in our final report. The 2026 parliamentary elections were credible and competently managed, marking a pivotal step towards restoring democratic governance and the rule of law. For the first time since 2008, elections were genuinely competitive, with fundamental freedoms broadly respected. However, sporadic, localized political violence and persistent fear of mob attacks that were often triggered by manipulated online narratives harmed this democratic process, and we took note of the limited political space that was afforded to women during these historic elections. The Bangladesh Electoral Commission worked independently and transparently, maintaining the confidence of stakeholders and upholding the integrity of the polls. The orderly and peaceful election day, followed by a transparently conducted tabulation of results and wide acceptance of the outcome, clearly illustrated how a credible process can propel the renewal of democracy. These elections were conducted under a renewed legal framework that largely accords with international standards for democratic elections. The 2025 amendments strengthened inclusion and credibility. Further reform to rebuild trust in state institutions and to strengthen the separation of powers was also initiated before the polls. Notwithstanding these efforts, the legal electoral framework remains fragmented, and these amendments did not address all shortcomings and ambiguities. Hence, revision is required to enhance legal certainty and to close loopholes that risk eroding integrity and transparency. There is also a need to revise or repeal laws that unduly restrict freedom of expression. In the positive, the Election Commission adopted a proactive approach to rebuilding public trust in elections. The Commission demonstrated transparency and openness. It responded promptly to media queries and shared information of public interest. It was important that dialogue with political parties was maintained throughout the process. However, the stringent campaign rules were not consistently enforced, at times feeding grievances about an uneven playing field. Notable efforts were made by the Electoral Commission to ensure electoral security, and election day preparations were undertaken professionally and on time. Some 770,000 voters living abroad were enfranchised during a postal ballot, which was a success. The training of more than 850,000 polling staff was well delivered, and the distribution of materials went smoothly. On election day, poll workers managed the voting efficiently, while the consistent presence of party agents from both major parties enhanced transparency and accountability. Vote counting and tabulation of results were competently handled, yet integrity safeguards during these two critical phases could be strengthened. Overall, the tabulation of results was transparent. Party agents could follow the process, and returning officers were regularly releasing updates on constituency results, which built public confidence in their accuracy. Nevertheless, the slow and analog nature of the Electoral Commission's nationwide results publication limited the voters' access to official election data. In this digital age, this can be remedied easily. Overall, the parliamentary elections were competitive, and voters were offered a broad range of political alternatives. The campaign itself was dynamic, and candidates enjoyed freedom of assembly and of expression. However, closer to the polls, the rhetoric heightened, and the focus of public debate shifted from policies to personal insults and mutual allegations on misconduct. intra-party conflicts. Local patronage networks and varying financial means also shaped the political field. Many electoral inquiry and adjudication committees were proactive and played a positive role in upholding campaign rules, yet financial and logistical constraints limited their effectiveness. The EU Electoral Observation Mission received many reports about committees responding promptly to complaints, conducting summary trials, and raising awareness among stakeholders, which was a welcomed development. When we analyze the campaign, we also assess the campaign financing rules. In essence, those rules are outdated and ineffective. Although campaign spending was capped by the law, the post-election reporting is mandated. There is very limited oversight in practice, and mechanisms to verify compliance are not effective. Hence, a comprehensive reform in this field would be beneficial. More efforts are also needed to enhance women's political participation. Despite the central role women played in the 2024 uprising, their participation as candidates and political leaders was minimal during these elections. They were nominated in extremely low numbers, accounting for just under 4% of the total candidates. The mission also received reports of online and also offline violence against women. All this evidenced a lack of political will to promote equality and also underscored an urgent need for new affirmative measures to advance women in national politics. Persons with disabilities also continued to face significant barriers to full participation, including poor physical access to many polling stations. The elections also brought great anxiety to the already underrepresented religious and ethnic minority groups, including indigenous peoples, and many of these groups raised concerns of violence and political marginalization. The mission had a dedicated social media monitoring unit which tracked communication on some 900 Facebook pages and close to 300 TikTok accounts. In total, the mission reviewed more than 500,000 posts, and I can say with confidence the digital quest for the 55.6 million strong youth vote was fierce. The mission identified at least 23 disinformation incidents and saw concerted efforts to delegitimize the elections. There were also digital attacks on minorities and on female activists. We can conclude that partisan influencers and deceptive media accounts, including some from outside Bangladesh, were the prime vectors of disinformation on Facebook and TikTok. National fact-checking initiatives, jointly with digital rights activists, took important steps to counter this disinformation. Civil society developed innovative platforms to track disinformation. Fact-checkers collaborated with trusted traditional media houses, and even the Election Commission was debunking false narratives. However, social media platforms were slow to respond to national reports and appeared ill-prepared to safeguard digital information integrity at scale. The mission also had a dedicated traditional media monitoring unit which daily recorded and analyzed election coverage in broadcast and print media. In total, more than 600 hours of primetime programs was reviewed. We saw that several private media outlets strived to offer balanced coverage of the elections, raised voters' awareness, and organized political talk show, which was really commendable. However, at the same time, media continued to face long-standing structural problems. Journalists informed us about digital and physical harassment, and we noted with concern instances of digital-led violence against media houses. Such actions curb media freedom and harm freedom of expression. And now I will finish this overview by a very encouraging finding. A revitalized civic space has emerged in the wake of the July uprising. Numerous grassroots organizations had launched election-related initiatives and made an important to restoring public trust in elections. Civil society carried out voter information campaigns, it monitored political violence and disinformation, and observed elections. The mission commends all those efforts that added to transparency and represented important advocacy for human rights. Election observation was a new activity for many of those organizations, and their enthusiasm can be built upon in future elections. Now I will conclude with recommendations that come from our overall assessment in the 2026 elections, and let me underline these recommendations are offered for the consideration of all electoral stakeholders. Our 19 recommendations are listed in the annex at the back of the final report, which you will receive shortly, and they are also having a detailed description in the body of the report. These recommendations are, first of all, focusing on strengthening legal certainty, enhancing electoral integrity safeguards, ensuring transparency in political finance, promoting safe digital communication environment, and the advancement of women in national politics. All our recommendations are also translated into Bangla and will be available to all of you after this press conference. And the mission has identified 6 priority recommendations, and they are listed in the report, and they are as follows. Number 1. Revise the legal framework governing parliamentary elections to address inconsistencies and loopholes, reduce fragmentation, strengthen legal certainty, and ensure closer alignment with international standards for democratic elections. Number 2. Ensure consistent arrangements for maintaining transparency during the tabulation of votes at sub-district and district levels, such as projection of data entry on screens, as well as prompt publication of complete preliminary and final election results, including online. Number 3, amend the RPO to representation of people order to include strict monitoring and enforcement measures, ensuring that all political parties achieve the goal of 33% women as members of all internal party committees by the year 2030, and consider requiring that all political parties nominate at least 1/3 women candidates for national and local elections. Number 4, promote a safer and more transparent digital space by amending the cybersecurity ordinance to establish binding legal obligations for social media platforms aimed at safeguarding informational and electoral integrity. Those obligations might encompass defined collaboration protocols, special measures around elections, algorithmic transparency, and regular reporting on content moderation activities. Number 5, review and strengthen campaign finance provisions to ensure that spending limits and reporting obligations are realistic, enforceable, and subject to effective verification and oversight. The RPO could require candidates and political parties to submit audited election expenditure accounts in a standardized format. provide for systematic controls by the Election Commission during and after the campaign, and set clear deadlines for the publication of financial reports. And number 6, consider extending eligibility for postal voting to other categories of voters in Bangladesh who are unable to cast their ballot in person on the election day, such as homebound voters and persons with disabilities, internally displaced persons, migrant laborers, and students, while retaining existing integrity safeguards and exploring additional ones. Additional voting arrangements, such as early voting, suitable for franchising other categories of voters, could also be introduced. These were the 6 priority recommendations. But I would like to note that these elections were really a significant step in many ways that deserve to be underlined. They took place under an interim government, following an unprecedented uprising and public demand for change. They were highly competitive and professionally managed. Despite lingering concerns, elections took place peacefully, and that achievement should be acknowledged. The outcome of these elections changed the political landscape, and in contrast to previous elections, the results were broadly accepted. This is no doubt attributable to the solid work of the Electoral Commission, legal reforms, and steadfast commitment by electoral stakeholders from across the political and social spectrum to the democratic process. At the EU, and as an EU electoral observation missions, we were really proud to support this Bangladesh success. Against this overall positive backdrop, the work of improving and refining electoral process remains an essential ongoing exercise in any country, also here in Bangladesh. In this spirit, we offer our final report and its 19 recommendations, so there are more, with the hope of contributing positively to future elections in Bangladesh. We are looking to discussing these recommendations with the national stakeholders, as it is essential to continue an inclusive dialogue on the next steps to strengthen democracy and rule of law and to build public trust. The European Union stands ready to support national partners in the work of our mission is now finished, but let me assure you that the European Union delegation here remains committed to working with its Bangladeshi partners on strengthening the democratic processes, and will continue to take keen interest in electoral reform in the coming months and years. And thank you very much for listening, and let me again extend my gratitude to all our interlocutors and to our authorities for the welcome and their cooperation over the course of this electoral process. This has been really a big privilege for myself and for the Electoral Observation Mission to enjoy the hospitality, the warmth and openness of the people of the beautiful country of Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Observer. Now we are opening the floor for questions. We're going to take questions in groups of 3. Please state your name and the media you're representing. We have moving microphones around. So let's start here.
Thank you, Jeps, for sharing the camera picture. Thank you, Jobs, for sharing such final report. My question is, we had several allegations for a couple of constituency, like especially from Dhaka. So did you have any kind of observation from that particular constituency, like Dhaka 8, Dhaka 15, or somewhere else?
Three questions.
Questions, yes. Channel 24.
Hello and good afternoon. This is Hasif. I work for Channel 24. Hello. Hello.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hello. Somebody is not interested. Yeah. Thank you. This is Hasif from Channel 24. So my question in particular, election financing. Was there any concern or somebody spending huge amount of money during his or her campaign, which is somehow sort of give him or her more leverage than any other candidates, especially in the election financing? That's number one. Number two, as we have seen the less participation from the women, do you think, is there your suggestion, anything like that the parties need to be more open towards the women in terms of empowering them in the politics? That's my two questions. Thank you.
These are three. Okay. Three questions, not three people. So thank you very much for those questions. They are all extremely relevant. As for the appeals and issues with counting in certain constituencies, we know that there have been appeals for that. I think in that sense, of course, we are also covering this very process extensively in our report. The main thing is, of course, that we stick to the legal procedures, and also and this is what you have, all numbers and all the countings down to the polling station are openly available on the Electoral Commission's website. In that sense, I think that, of course, there is no such a thing as a, crystal clear election in any country. But at the same time, all the possible issues have to be dealt with in a transparent way according to the legal procedure. And this is what we all have also been observing, because of course our mission didn't leave the country on the 12th of February. We were staying here for more than a week to observe the post-electoral process and how these issues were handled. About the spending of, yes, this is one of the recommendations we have really emphasized in our final report, that campaign spending has to be declared and the rules have to be clear and transparent, and what is probably even more important, enforceable. And in that sense, of course, you have your own experience with what you saw in the campaign. I am not going to make any announcements about any of the parties involved, but the reason for that is that basically there are no strict rules in place which could be enforced in this process, because of course, this is one of the basic ideas of democracy, is that we limit the influence of huge spending on the results, and the campaign finance has to be clearly set in the law, and those rules have to be observed. And this is, again, as I said, one of our priority recommendations. And the third question about the women's participation, our main concern is that, first of all, Bangladesh has to follow its own commitments regarding that. This applies first to international commitments, which involve also your acceptance of the women's resolution, which against the discrimination of women, which is an international treaty, basically, and but also domestic commitments. For example, the rules that political parties should have at least 33% of women in their internal institutions. This should be observed. Of course, we can talk also about other factors, but this is also one of our recommendations. Let's start with implementing those commitments that are already there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Further questions on this side, please?
Thanks for giving me floor. This is Simon. I'm a journalist who representing a leading newspaper in Bangladesh, the Daily EKHON. My question is that after the election, we got to see a number of major political party, they alleged and claims that there was a election engineering. So regarding these issues.
Any more questions? It looks like that will be the final one, so.
Good. Thank you very much. Our main conclusion. Oh, there is another question. Okay.
Please go ahead.
You should switch on the mic, I think.
Sorry for the botheration. This is Parviz. I'm working for Daily Bangladesh Post, it's a leading English daily newspaper. Actually, this is the second phase and the final presentation of your report so far we know. As you have gone through your observation process during the posting, it's the area of interest to know how about your observation in the last 2 months as the government has assumption in office.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. As far as I see, there are no further questions. Let me answer these two. The allegations about, let's say, the possible election engineering. We did our work according to the best practices of electoral observation that are internationally accepted, and we didn't observe anything that might resemble some kind of electoral engineering that might invalidate the results. There is nothing like that. I think that the Electoral Commission has really done a lot in order to make this whole thing transparent, just to have the results, from the very top, from the national level down to the single polling station, you see the results. What are the results in a particular polling station and how they are being tabulated up to the district and constituency and national level. I think this is really important also for citizens. If you really have any allegations about electoral engineering, fraud, whatever, you can just legally contest the results, and there is a procedure how to do that. And I think this is a very important thing, and in that sense, of course we know that there are, as far as I understand, still some pending cases on that, which is, again, only part of the system. Again, I don't know any democratic election where at least some kind of part of the process wouldn't be somehow challenged, but the important thing is that there is a clear, neutral, impartial, legal procedure to deal with that. And as for the second question on the post-electoral environment, yes, I mean, of course, normal parliamentary, normal democratic life has started. Pros and cons. We all know that these last months have been also very turbulent domestically, but this is in every country like that when a new parliament convenes, the new government is built, and so on and so forth. What is important from the EU's point of view is that the elected politicians really understand that responsibility to move forward up to the expectations of the Bangladeshi people who, after the July 2024 uprising, really expressed their will to have a democratic, pluralistic, developed order in the country. And in that sense, of course, well, to be elected, me, myself, as an elected member of the European Parliament, I know what does it mean. I mean, being elected, it doesn't mean only your rights to take decisions. This also involves a huge responsibility. And I think that the newly elected Parliament really understands this responsibility to move forward, because these elections have been, in many ways, crucial for your country. So thank you very much. Oh, there is one more question.
Thank you. Question there, yes.
No, I just wanted to have a supplement question, because I'm not clear about your answer. As I mentioned, that we have got allegation, particularly in Dhaka, a couple of seats, and did you find any kind of evidence over there that there was election engineering?
Well, and it's, I'm afraid, not up to us to say that. This is for the court. Again, and of course, well, and if you have information of any other Bangladeshi citizen has an information about alleged irregularities somewhere, this is what the courts and the process is there. This process is analyzed. Of course, it also has its strengths and weaknesses, for example, about how the appeals are being handled, both pre-election and post-election. One of our suggestions is the timing, of course, because those procedures shouldn't take too long in both cases, both pre-election and post-election. But what we see here is that there is a legal pathway to go if there is some information about some kind of demeanor or irregularity about how votes are counted, how candidates are registered. So, thank you very much. And I wish you,
sorry, last call for questions.
Hello, this is Rokunujaman Moni from the Business Standard. My question is, how would you evaluate the transparency of the postal ballot process in this election, please?
Well, this is an interesting question, and we really pay a lot of attention to postal voting in our report. This is, first of all, we commend the very idea that the Bangladeshi citizens living abroad should be enfranchised and they should be given the opportunity to vote. And this is not an easy task. On the one hand, of course, there are concerns about sometimes secrecy of votes. On the other hand, of course, we really want to, the Bangladeshi citizens who want to vote, to do that wherever they live. And if we see the number of votes cast, it's quite impressive, without any doubt. On the other hand, of course, well, we all know that this, the registration with app and this whole process could be improved, but I'm more or less convinced that the Electoral Commission and the Bangladeshi authorities in general will learn some lessons from how, well, what were the strengths and weaknesses of this process and what could be improved. At the same time, I think that the very idea behind the postal voting is a very commendable one, because people tend to be mobile all across the world, and that means that their will can be expressed not just being here in Bangladesh, but also elsewhere where they reside.
Thank you so much. So I guess there is one more question. Go ahead, please.
Hello, this is Miftah Karib from GTV News. You're appreciating the postal ballots process, but I would like to know, there are 10 millions of people, those are living outside the country, whole around the world, but only 15 lakhs vote or casted on this election. Is there any mismanagement whole process? Could you please know?
Well, one of the suggestions we are making in our report regarding the postal vote is, first of all, just to expand the possibility for postal voting also to other categories of citizens living in the country. Not just people living elsewhere, but people with disabilities. People, we all know that, for example, there have been also restrictions on public transport during the election day. This could also, in some cases, for homebound people, improve their access to voting if they were allowed to vote by post. So I think that, but in that sense, let me reiterate, I think that the postal voting itself is a way to go. At the same time, also all the possible problems with that, well, should also serve as a lesson for the Electoral Commission for preparing for the next elections, which are not so far away, as we all know, the local ones. Thank you.